He's a Walter Payton Man of the Year award winner in his 15 years in the National Football League, and he's now in his 10th season as the Executive Vice President of Football Operations of the NFL. Troy Vincent joining us here on the Rich Eisen Show. How you doing, Troy?
I'm doing well. Holiday season, going into week 16.
Yep.
College football is coming to a close.
That's
so
right.
We're in that championship run. I'm excited to see how this thing ends up.
Me too. You and me both. Just real quick, I've got Prime on later on. You got a good Deion Sanders story, Troy, from back in your day?
What do you got? Deion, everyone always reminds me when Deion and I got into it on the field one time.
Mm-hmm.
It was one when Deion was playing both sides of the ball. When I was in Philly, he was in Dallas. And used to always hear myself, Bobby Taylor, Al Harris, we were the corners at that time. We used to say, if Prime goes to wide receiver, we got to take advantage of him. And we got into a scuffle. And I got into a scuffle in a play that they really should have thrown both of us out.
Oh.
But they didn't. Yeah. We were swinging. We were tossing each other around. It was a prime time game, Dallas, Philly. I think it was a 4:00 game. They should have threw us out, but they didn't.
So would you, as the EVP of football operations, have thrown you out of the game, Troy? Would you have done that?
That instance, yes.
You would have.
In that instance, yes.
Okay. Very good. See, that's straight up. I appreciate the honesty right there. You'd have thrown yourself out. So, obviously it's fascinating that you have your defensive acumen. You come from a defensive side of the ball. We just saw Damontae Kazee be suspended for the rest of the season and the postseason as well, should the Steelers make it on the hit that I saw with my own two eyes on Michael Pittman. How do you square the concept of placing don't hit somebody that you're supposed to separate the ball from in the manner that Kazee hit it and place it on the defender to do that?
So in Kazee's instance, Rich, we have a history here. So it wasn't just the one play in Indianapolis. And we just saw, are you going for the ball? Anybody watches that video, we're not looking for the end result. In particular, myself, who's responsible for ejections during the game, I'm not looking for the end results. I'm looking for the actual action. If you saw a player, you see a player going for the ball, that's different because you have incidental contact. We're not trying to say, no, don't separate man from the ball. So in this particular case, it's almost like a lineup. But in Kazee's situation here, I know that was that's still under hearing or it's being heard today, or that decision. But we have a history here going back from his days in Atlanta, Dallas, and now Pittsburgh. There's been a history here to get us here. And we really focus in on Rich. And John Runyon's my colleague in this particular space. We really try to focus on education. We understand separating man from ball, making a play. But then we look at it, put it in three categories to make it simple for your audience. Intentional and incidental contact, or is it avoidable? So the defender is responsible for that. And when we look at it, was that intentional? Meaning, did the defender line the runner up? And then is there incidental? That contact was just incidental. And then you go, was that avoidable? So we look at, that's kind of how you narrow it down. You narrow down the variables and go, in this particular case, it's just time to, we got that little bit of history here that we just need to address. Good player. We just need to make the adjustment for current times today. It's a different game. It's a safer game, but Rich, it's a better game.
So there's a couple more questions I have on this front before we hit on a few other topics. Do you take into account, because again, you're a 15-year vet of this game, and Runyon, obviously, and I believe the two agreed upon appeals officers are James Thrash, right, and the great Derek Brooks, who's in the HOF. So do you take into account that maybe the quarterback shouldn't have thrown it there? Right, that it's the stuff that Tom Brady is saying, and I understand you're trying to educate here, but there is a defense that's being called, and a defender is in an area and is thinking instinctively, and the ball should never have been put there in the first place. I'm just trying to come up with the way that you are thinking about this, and if you factor that sort of X's and O's into your decision making?
No, sir. And I can't, because that's the case. Almost Tom is right. I'm not disagreeing with him, but in the case, in my current position here, I have to remove I'm seeing, is there space? Is this particular tackle or the action, is that avoidable? Is there space to avoid where we just hit? And it's really about protecting the head and neck area. And we don't factor in, man, why did the QB put that ball in that space? Really put the receiver in the bad spot, or the back, or the tight end. But that's not factored in on my decision on game day, whether to disqualify or as it pertains to the suspension.
And if I'm not mistaken, I just heard you say some of the suspension or fines are used as an education to tell players, hey, listen, this is the hitting area. This shouldn't be part of your body to use to hit. Keep your head up so you're seeing stuff. It does appear this year there's more of an emphasis on fining players, and not just players on Fridays, but offensive players who are using their helmets to just get in what looks like a normal block. It's not penalized. J.J. Watt has really been bringing this to attention on social media. Has there been a raised emphasis on fining players like this year, Troy?
I would just say, Rich, we've learned. So when the rule was implemented, the use of helmet rule was implemented in 2018, 2019, it was really targeted toward the defensive player, getting the helmet out of the game, trying to remove the helmet as a weapon. Mm-hmm. As it has evolved and as we've learned, the offensive players now, you see there's a few backs, tight ends, fullbacks, where they are using, because it shouldn't be just, this rule is not in place for just a defender. So we've seen it, but we really try to use it as an education. Some say we take a little bit long to getting to this place, but there are unnecessary risks that are part of the inherited part of the game. We really look for the guys, and I'm going to say myself and John, we got many former players that are involved. This is really about the quality of life later on. And it's a different game today. The game has evolved. I respect my peers and their opinion about the game. We're not playing in the 60s and the 70s anymore. There's enough research and facts that it affects the quality of life. So let's try to remove the unnecessary risk that is associated with hitting in that head or neck area intentionally, or where you feel like you're lining someone up. So trying to remove that head out of the game so it's not used as a weapon. It's been an educational. It's different for all of us. I didn't come from that world. It's a different game. It's a safer game. It's a better game. And we also think about the 21 or 22-year-old today, Rich, who doesn't know what life's going to be like at 35 or 40 or 50. That's our role as gatekeepers of the game today, to try to remove that unnecessary risk.
NFL the EVP of football operations, Troy Vincent, here on the Rich Eisen Show. So I have been in front of this microphone in this chair for a very long time, talking about changing the rule that a ball that's fumbled into and through or out of the end zone goes back to the defense for a very long time. And I've heard a lot of stuff like, well, it doesn't really happen so much, we're not going to really change it, or we're talking about it, but I don't really see anything. Your language at the microphone last week, sir, at the meeting of membership, sounded like there's a possibility that this could truly be changed as a rule. Am I reading this right, Troy?
I read your Big Ten clips as a Big Tenner.
Okay.
No, so yes, it doesn't happen very often, Rich. When you look at it, it's only happened 3 times this year. Mm-hmm. And many believe it's such a punitive penalty.
Yes.
For the offense. Why? There's been more discussion around it this year than I've heard in my last 10 years or 9 years. So it is something that the membership, the coaches will have to discuss. I think if there's a year that it gets adjusted, I do believe this is the year. Mm-hmm. I think this is the year, just based off of, is it so punitive? Now, the coaches in the room, Rich, feel a lot differently about it. And what do they say? This is always the argument. And Coach Belichick says it best. You got to protect that football. You cannot, there's a skill, but you have to protect the football at all costs. When there's a little bit of lackadaisicalness of crossing that end zone, or you want to stick, put the ball out there to cross the pylons, there's a consequence that comes with that. So you get the argument of why are we rewarding poor skill? Or so that's what you get. But I do believe, just based off what I've seen and what I've heard, we do need to take a look at that. And I think the membership and the coaches will take a look at, I think it'd be healthy discussion. This may be the year where I think there's an adjustment. And people may say, well, what would you adjust?
Yes.
Well, maybe giving the offense back the ball, maybe put it on the 5-yard line, maybe put it on the 15-yard line. But it shouldn't be a turnover. I think that's the gist of it.
Right, and then maybe we're wondering if you do give the ball back to the offense, other than just the wear, is there a penalty that comes with it that you lose a down, similar to maybe intentional grounding? There are ways to still make it punitive, but keep the ball in the hands of an offense that did maybe, and Belichick is right. My colleague here is a big Patriots fan saying, notice Patriot players never reach the ball for the pylon because they are coached not to do it, and they're doing their jobs, right? To use the Belichick phrase, and I understand that. But if the ball's fumbled at the 1-inch line, it's yours. If it's fumbled at the minus 1-inch line, it's not. And that's the arbitrary weirdness that I think would come home to roost in a very negative way if it happens in the Super Bowl.
Yes. Did you see the Moore play in Tampa last week? That was a really, really good example. The receiver goes in and he extends the ball out.
Right.
At the very, very end. And you have to go back. Where did the ball come out? But it wasn't clear and obvious when he just crossed. So is that the play we're trying to capture? The Moore touchdown, I think it was Moore, the receiver Moore in Tampa.
Yes.
But he extends the ball, crosses. It looks like he's crossed the goal line. And then, boom, a fumble occurs, which many would say great defensive effort, great hustle, great play. There wasn't enough clear and obvious evidence to overturn it. But that is one of the 3 plays that we'll watch from this season. But historically, Rich, and again, it doesn't happen very often. I think we've seen there was the most ever was 9 in 2017. But typically, then 2015, there were 6. Other than that, you see that play happening less than 5 times a year. And we're looking at 40 to 41,000 plays per season.
Right. By the way, I also think if the ball's fumbled through and out the back of the end zone, that I don't mind, you lose possession. Like if you fumble it into the end zone and out the back, it's different than the sides. And I know that you're making things maybe a little bit more confusing. But again, since I don't have a seat in the competition committee, Troy, although I feel I should, just straight up, coming through the front door here.
I will provide your input. I would tell him that you and I spoke about this.
I will appreciate
that.
This
is important. This is important to you. Not only have you spoken about it this year, but you've probably been the most vocal individual in the sports arena that have spoken about this publicly.
Thank you, sir. And I appreciate the use of arena because I feel I am in one. I agree. That is true. And so before I let you go, is the brotherly shove on the verge of extinction? Possibly?
I don't think so. And I shared this with the membership a week ago. And then our player health and safety committee led by Ronnie Lott and Curtis Martin, we met last week in Dallas and we discussed the play. And it was very clear that the player says don't punish, in particular, Philly for being able to execute that play. A year ago, we studied it. The last 2 years, we've studied it. It's a play that has evolved. And I raised that to the membership, and we talked about that as a committee. You see different design pass plays. We saw even the other night in the Philly-Seattle game where people are starting to do some things outside. It's just not like a normal quarterback sneak up and people are pushing. So the play has evolved, and I think it stays. I really do. I think it stays. Is it an ugly play? People say that. What we have to monitor is what's the unintended consequences of the player taking that in his own hand and trying to defend that. We see that, we saw the other night, Bobby Wagner come over top.
Yes.
We saw when San Francisco did it with Fred Warner coming over top. We want to make sure that player, is safe with those consequences to make that choice to go up there. So, but it was a healthy discussion around the push play and making sure that one, we don't hold some, we don't take away a play that they execute really well and others don't away from the game.
Yeah, I saw DeAndre Swift ran one. They handed it off to him off of the push play, but we also saw Kelsey get popped for moving the football a little bit further up than where it was spotted. We also saw yet another offensive offsides call. Is that prevalence of that call
so Rich,
coming off of this?
That's really, really, really good thought there. We saw that a year ago when we were studying the play. What can we do better to officiate it?
Mm-hmm.
And that is just making sure that players are properly aligned and no one is encroaching that neutral zone or no one's lined up offside. We've seen and we've let Philadelphia know, hey, that movement of the ball, by the movement of the ball, you moving it 6 inches or, you're moving it, you now put the defender automatically in the neutral zone, which he's offside. So we as an officiating group can officiate the play more efficiently from just a formation standpoint of where people are aligned.
And that includes plays that aren't even in the brotherly shove, like, say, the end of Kansas City and Buffalo. Like now you're seeing more offensive offsides focus based on that.
Yes, and that's been that way all season long. You hear about the warning, stop it. They did that when I played during my era. They'll just tell me, hey, 23, get your hands off. Hey, 23, let it go. But let's you're getting paid to line up properly, as we would say, line up to call your alignment, assignment, and then you play ball. We should not have people aiding us and telling us whether I'm good or bad. So that's play the game. It's enough gamesmanship going on. It's already difficult to officiate the game. Now, when you put gamesmanship, you got to do other responsibilities that should be someone else's responsibility. But that has been a focus all season long about making sure people are lined up properly.
Troy, I appreciate the time. I could go on and on with you. I mean, we haven't even touched upon replay. I've got a ton of ideas on that front too. So
I'm gonna call you offline to get your thoughts because I have a lot in that area too.
Okay,
replay and replay assist.
The assist. I'm all for it. I mean, again, I know I could truly go on and on and on with you, but if you wouldn't mind, maybe we'll get you back on later on in the next couple months and we'll discuss it here on the program.
Love you. Thanks for having me.
Troy, you're really one of my favorites, and I know you don't do this quite often, so I truly appreciate it. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you all.
You bet. That's Troy Vincent, the NFL Executive Vice President of Football Operations here on The Rich Eisen Show. Catch The Rich Eisen Show every single day on the Roku channel, 12 to 3 Eastern, for free.